it's also, interestingly, a lot more easier to earn money. When I started web systems, I think 1996, it was very hard to kind of convince people to part with money for software. Right? Software was assumed to be free, so it was very difficult to kind of ask people to pay money for software. Unless you were in the body shopping business, it was very hard to make money. So nowadays it's not true. Even my son says, I'm going to quit. He's already quit engineering, I think, in his mind. I want to be a rock band, start a rock band, which he did, and he plays the bass guitar. So he doesn't have that, sense of, hey, what happens if I fail? So I think it's kind of reduced a lot nowadays. I think it is.
That actually brings me to the next element of your question right now. You spoke about your family in terms of your mother. Now let's talk about your immediate family now, your wife and your children. And given 17 hours, 30 minutes, and that kind of a time spent at work, how do you really balance out your work life as well as give time to your family? And how do they really support you in terms of making you successful?
So very interesting. So my wife is also an engineer, but she worked only for the first, I think. So we went to the US together when I was doing my masters. So kind of very different environment. But when we came back, she worked for 5 years. Then she stopped working. But she never ever has asked me, why I'm late. She just accepted it. I think that is phenomenal. I think that kind of support is important, definitely very important. But it's also something that I consider myself extremely lucky about, because that is very very that's the only reason I can do this.
Yeah, maybe that's one more My Story session. We should invite spouses of entrepreneurs, right?
That is a great idea.
They give this as an example. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the second thing, it was very difficult when my kids were growing up, as you can imagine, right? But luckily I'm a high bandwidth person. I kind of fit a lot of activities in the day for myself, and kind of getting the right kind of mix comes fairly naturally to me. So I'm one of those lucky guys, kind of who can balance that a little bit better. But it's still hard. It's not easy, and that's one of the I shouldn't say sacrifices, because that's a bad word in terms of Hindi cinema. But it's definitely something that sometimes you think about and regret. I remember kind of going away for 4 months because we were in the middle of a large implementation in the US in my website days when my daughter was born. So that was hard, as you can imagine. And the last 3 years, I've missed my daughter's birthday all 3 years, and my wedding anniversary all 3 years. So you can imagine my marriage is still intact. My wife and kids haven't left. Yeah, absolutely. My wife and kids have not left me. They still love me, I think. but that intensity, I think, is interesting. So the good thing is my family believes that one day, one moment is not important. I think the journey is important than the destination. It actually, that one day, the one birthday, the one midnight, and the call is not as important as the 365 days in the year. So we spread our anniversaries and birthdays across the year, right? And every small event in our house is a celebration. So it's very interesting when you look at that kind of chemistry. I think that is also, I kind of don't tell this to my wife, she's not here, which is good. That is also part of sales and marketing.
Being recorded.
Sorry.
So now you're on record.
Yeah, I'll make sure she doesn't see the video.
It's on Facebook.
Ouch. You ended my marriage. Yeah, but I think that is important. I think that is, it's also a state of mind at the end of the day, right? Having the kind of liberty to do what you like to do, what you love to do, what you're passionate about, is not your own individual thing. It has to come from your family. So unless your family supports it, nothing becomes real.
I'm sure they do, because being a high bandwidth person means, I'm sure some of you read his introduction there, right? There are so many other things that he has interests, and he's an avid reader, right? He's an avid gamer, and I believe he spends about 4 hours every week gaming. I mean, on top of this, for his wife to allow him go and play games of all the things, right? I think that's really unusual. So, tell us about, how do you really manage, and you play squash, you play table tennis, you play golf, right? I mean, there's a whole range of stuff that you seem to be doing. And besides that, if I remember, parasailing
and skydiving.
Skydiving, wow, that's a really, really long list.
Yeah.
So how do you manage that?
So I'm into adventure sports. Well, one thing is, of course, you have to have the right time for the right thing to do. And one thing that helps me, I travel a lot, obviously. So when I'm traveling, I think you end up getting a lot more time typically. So golf is actually, I play a lot more golf in the US than I play here. Whenever I travel, weekends.
For business also, I think.
Definitely for business. I think we've actually done a lot of business on the golf course, and I used to think it was really an oxymoron. We really want to kind of is it true? Does it work? But it does happen. It does happen all the time, and I think that's the reason I took up golf in the first place. Because when you watch it on TV, it's such a boring game, right? It's like chess, watching chess on TV. But I think one of the other things in terms of just having, sensitive about time too. You can't stop me from talking. But one of the things is again, how you manage. Most of the table tennis stuff, is with my son. This way you kind of get the right people together, so you kind of share that time as well to a certain extent. Gaming, my son and I, both of us are passionate, so typically we end up playing Call of Duty together.
So quality time spent with your kids, get them addicted to what you love.
So one interesting thing, I'm not going to miss this chance, one of my favorite stories. So when my son was very small, I used to love, I still love of course, but I used to hear classic rock a lot, all the time. When I was working, when I was, in the house, this thing was going on. So he used to kind of shut his ears and say, Dad, this is giving me a big headache, turn it off. So, obviously he said that, obviously my wife had to kind of, put me in line, yeah. And for like 4 years I gave up hearing, listening to rock. And now it's the other way around. His music hurts me.
He's the rocker now.
He's the rocker now. So things change, and so I tried to kind of get him into it so I could enjoy the music as well. But it took him 15 years to realize he really liked it, and Dad was not wrong. So it's it's this involvement. I take my daughter out for golf sometimes, so that kind of helps. So balancing it out is good.
So 2 questions I have, and that's the end of it, and then I'll throw it over to the floor quickly, and if you can make it brief and simple. First is, what do you think have been the biggest advantages for you to have been a startup based out of Pune?
That's an interesting question, right? So we actually, in Icertis, we took the decision of being based headquarters-wise from Seattle, primarily because of the dream of going public on the NASDAQ. But being obviously the whole ecosystem and the center of our universe is Pune, right? If you look at that, I think the biggest advantage is people. It's people always tell me, hey, you get better luck hiring the right kind of people in Bangalore. But I believe that the kind of the relationships we make here, if they go very deep, the kind of productivity you get because people are consistent and stay a lot longer in a product company is huge. So I think that's, from a business perspective, I think that's been great, being out of Pune. The second one is, and this is very interesting, I think it's the nature of Puneites. I've been born and brought up in Pune. My dad too was brought up in Pune. So kind of, the whole family is really deeply ingrained. I think it comes to us naturally to have the patience and the motivation I was talking about. Right? I think that is, and that's a trait that I see across the board, across all the friends that I've made in my life who come from Pune. Vijay Manwani, who was the CTO of Blade Logic, was from Pune. Hemant Kurande, who was the CTO of Storability, was from Pune, or is from Pune. So, all these great entrepreneurs who went to the US were successful. kind of had a link to Pune. So those traits actually are important, and that passion actually is very interesting. I think that is why we have such a